Welcome, everybody, to the Como Vanguard podcast. We are how many shows into this, Nick Knoth?
I think this is show number 8.
Really?
That sounds right. We'll go with that.
Lucky
All
number
right.
8.
We'll go with that. This is a show where we talk about city matters, especially the city council meetings. We scheduled the recording of this podcast immediately the day after a city council meeting so that it's still fresh on our minds and it is fresh news. We go to a bit more depth than what we normally do with what we normally see in other media sources. And so Nick Knoth, idea, I think, is perfect for talking about city in depth. So, Nick, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, David. Welcome, listeners, to our show. As always, this is the companion show to the written publication available on Substack. You can find all things Como Vanguard at comovanguard.com, including submitting questions, of which we have a few today that we'll get to later in the show. But for now, we want to start with introducing our wonderful guest. We have joining us Nickie Davis. She is the executive director of the Downtown CID, otherwise known as the District. Nickie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. This has been a wonderful show. Been listening for quite a while now. For 8 episodes, I guess, 7 episodes. So
At least.
yeah, happy to be here.
So Nick and Nickie today. I like that
That's right.
quite a bit. I want a couple of questions for you before we get into talking about the questions that we've received from listeners and also about last night's city council meeting. How long have you been doing this job?
Yeah, so I have been the executive director since October of 2019, before COVID. And then before that, for about 2 years, I was the director. I was the outreach director. And before that, I had a business downtown and I was on the CID board. So I've been around for way too long.
What are the key elements of the job you do day to day?
Yeah. So for me, it is kind of face to face with the businesses, understanding what's going on downtown, and then working with our board of 15. They all either live downtown, own businesses, or own property downtown. Work very closely with the city. We're not part of the city, but we work very closely with them. Pretty much everything we do touches the city somehow. And then just making sure that things are operating smoothly. We have our clean team. We have our safety ambassadors coming soon, which I know we'll talk about. So answering emails, answering phone calls, lots of that good
Do you
stuff.
know how the, again, I have to look at this Downtown Community Improvement District was formed and like what the motivation was for it to exist?
Yeah, so we were created in 2011, 2012. We amended some stuff in 2012, and we're a 20-year sunset, so we will sunset in 2032 if we don't repetition to stay a CID. And before we were a CID, were the CCA, Central Columbia Association. So that was more of a BID, business association, was local people coming together to do cool stuff downtown. And Carrie Gardner, who is the director of the Loop CID, was the director at the time here. And they needed to get those cement awnings down that were all along Broadway. Anybody remembers? We still have chunks of them in our office. We had to get those down, and that was going to cost a significant amount of money. So I think that was the catalyst to become a CID, so that they could generate more money to do larger projects like that.
Interesting what happens downtown. Just forgive me, and I'll stop these questions in a moment. But I think maybe 2 weeks ago, Red Bull chariot races. And then you go from that to the Unbound Book Festival.
Yes.
2 very similar events.
Very
I'm just-
similar. Yes. Man, and that's what makes downtown Columbia so great, is all of these things that go on here, all of our small businesses that are here that makes us unique and interesting and not like every other downtown. I mean, the Red Bull chariot races, they have to pick where they're going. That's not a normal thing. And we got chosen here in Columbia. So that was super exciting. Something fun, something different. I love walking around downtown. He's still around, but I don't know if he still does it. But there was a dude that used to walk around with his little baby alligator all the time. There's just we did a commercial quite a long time ago, and these were professional. They came in from Chicago, I think, and did the commercial. And they said, Columbia is the greatest backdrop. You don't need extras in Columbia. There's always something going on. There's people, rollerblading. There's people riding their bikes. There's people using a puppet. It's just a random, and I love it so much.
Get hacky sack.
I was going to say
Hacky
the same
sack.
thing.
Oh, yes.
Shirtless kicking a hacky sack
Yep,
around.
right in front of our Columbia sculpture. Yep, very good.
Perfect placement, too.
I love it.
probably need to hit some of the high points. I
Yeah,
think there are a
well,
lot of things that I hope we talk to Nickie about because I think a lot comes to mind as I hear her answer some of these early questions. So maybe we'll get to those later. There was a report from you or you didn't say anything at the end of city council meeting last night, but they accepted the report pretty
Yes.
quickly. And I think it had to do with who was going to be on that 15-member board.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
you want to expand on how that works for our
Yeah.
listeners? Because this
Uh,
goes back to your point of where you're like kind of a city entity, but not a city
right.
entity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so the city literally cannot touch us. They can't tell us what to do with our budget, and they can make suggestions, but we can say yes or no to any of that. The only way the city can really touch us or affect what we do is through our board. So we do a board of 15. They have 3 years, then they can do another 3 years and roll off for a year and come back later. So every year we do a board slate. We reach out to the public, see who is interested, submit an application. Our board then votes on that slate. Typically, usually it's 5 people that roll off. Last night's was 2 open seats from one of our board members passing, and another board member had a family issue. So these were short-term seats that we just did in the middle of the year. So the board votes on that slate. That slate then goes to the mayor, and the mayor can say yes or no to that slate. Then if the mayor would say no, we would go back, find alternatives anyways. So that is how all of that works. And then they're on for 3 years.
Why does the city have a say in that?
It's the way it was the way our petition was written. It's a very odd, random thing, but in a lot of ways, I think it's good just to have some eyes on it that's maybe not somebody that sees it every day, that doesn't just like
Well,
see
and
it
I would say
constantly.
it's a nice combination of some oversight from elected officials and some buy-in from the city,
Yeah.
right? That they're invested, that they care about the downtown district and what happens and its success or failure,
Yes,
right? So it's a
absolutely.
little bit of both. And I'm sure it's also, I mean, it's the fact that the CID is effectively a special taxing district,
Hmm.
right? It has its own tax. It's a quasi-governmental entity. And so from that angle, I think it makes sense for that to occur. And it's also representative of the fact that, I don't remember the last time a mayor vetoed an appointee. I know it's happened, but I think it's been a minute. I don't think it's happened under this
No,
mayor,
no, it has not
uh,
happened under this mayor.
previous mayor, perhaps. But anyways, yeah, it's one of those things where for folks who don't live and breathe government, that there are these districts that overlay and they can overlay each other and they tax you and they have their own powers and
Hmm.
responsibilities like Nikki's work with the district does, that kind of goes under the radar, but it's
Yes,
very impactful, and in this case the district is very meaningful to the success of downtown, right? So you guys, you keep it clean, you're helping fund this downtown safety ambassador program, things like this, that if you didn't exist, some of those things would just outright not be happening.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, completely. Some of our main focuses are beautification, clean, safe, advocacy for our business and economic development. So each one of those pieces, the grants that we have for our businesses, the different murals, beautification things, the street lamps, those are all things that you probably would not see down here.
What are the
Otherwise.
boundaries of the district?
So we're about 50 square blocks, but it's not a nice
Yeah.
it's all contiguous, but so we go to Providence to Gumby's Pizza-ish. And then we go from Rose Music Hall to ITAP-ish.
Roughly. Yes.
Roughly, yes.
It's not a square.
It's not a square. Yeah. So, but the map is on our website, discoverthedistrict.com, if you want to see it. So, yeah, we're 50 square blocks ish. 3 of us in the office, 600 businesses.
Give
So,
or take on a given day.
yeah, yeah.
So it would seem to me like you would have to work talking about the relationship with the city. I'll just use an example. This is not a criticism, but I'm just curious as to who changes the banners on some of the light posts because, like, the Red Bull chariot races are still up there, and that was 2 weeks ago. Is
Mhm.
the city responsible for that? The city do the Christmas decorations? What's the
No, that's all us.
okay?
So those banners we haven't taken down mainly because of the wind that we have had these last couple of weeks. Banners. I could go on about banners. But yeah, so holiday lights, holiday decorations, horse-drawn carriages, that's all us. We have control of the banners on the light poles, and we added the new lighting that goes up and down. The city has control of it, but we helped pay for that
Mhm.
program.
And the other question I would have is the bridge that is partly constructed at Flat Branch Park, I think is a Parks and Recreation Department project. And I talked with someone from that commission, and I don't know what they're waiting on, but they're waiting on the end of that bridge. But that seems like that has been stalled for quite some
Oh
time.
my gosh, yeah, that was supposed to be done in 2021.
I'd say that's been stalled for at least 5
Yeah,
years.
yeah, all of that, the Columbia Sculpture and Flat Branch Park extension was supposed to be completed at the same time. We got our part done. But yeah, it was I forget what they said the last time I checked about that bridge, what it was, but it's gotta be done by that whole park's gotta be done by September because a lot of those funds are ARPA funds. Same with Northridge Arts District Park.
So, in other words, what you're saying is the downtown district has its responsibilities, and then the city would have its responsibilities, especially on a project like that.
Exactly. So anything the city was doing before we were created, the city should continue to do. We do the extra things. We clean the sidewalks. That's not something the city would do. Technically, the planters along Broadway, the city did that before we were here. But about 2 years ago, we just took it over because I've seen planters in other cities and I'm like, we're not getting that here. So let's just go ahead and do it. But that is a city purview that should have been done by the city. We're just, I guess particular about our
You
flowers.
raised the bar.
Yes, we raised the bar and we can't go back now.
Oh, you just keep bringing up more and more things that are going to make me go down a side trail that we shouldn't go down. Those planters are nice, but they are a pain in the rear to have to see around if you're trying to make a right turn on red.
Yeah.
And so I would, if I were king or in charge, stop right turns on red. But I know that that's not going to happen in the downtown area. I don't see any groundswell of support for that. But for safety purposes, the planters block the view.
We have discussed extensively about taking them out and doing other things, doing other types of planters there. Essentially, the last time we talked about it, which has been a little while, it was more expensive to take one of them out than redoing something else. It was wildly expensive just for one. It was like, I don't know.
It was incredibly expensive. I think this happened when I was on council.
Oh, okay.
I think that
Yeah.
discussion was happening, and it was disproportionately
Yeah.
expensive to do it, and that's why it hasn't happened.
Exactly. So that is definitely something that we are aware of. And
They do give a sense of safety, though, to pedestrians who are waiting to cross there. And then I also understand they give a good place to hang out for people.
yeah, and they're beautiful. We can do larger flowers and things in them, or if they're lower to the ground, we probably couldn't. We are aware, let's say.
It's an ongoing issue.
Yes.
Ongoing issue.
When
As
you
are
talk
many
about,
things.
maybe we'll talk about all these downtown district things before we hit at the end of this program, the actual city council meeting. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, Nick. You're going to have to stop me. How many of the cleaning crew is there? And they're full-time workers. I mean, I see them early in the morning when I'm walking through town.
Yes, they are 7 days a week. So we have 6, and that 6 is including the operations manager. Yeah, there's 6 guys. We want them to treat this like this is their career. We want people that love this type of thing. And they work currently from 7 to 3 every day. And in the summer, it usually goes to from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. because of the hotter days or whatever. Yeah, we have had this program for over 10 years with Block by Block, which is a national company that does basically anything you can think of for downtowns. So they have a horticulture arm, they have painting, they have all different types. We have their cleaning crew, and soon to be their security ambassadors will be down here as well. And that will also be 6, a team lead. And then we have the operational manager that's over both sides of that. And the amazing thing with Block by Block is how detailed their reporting is. We can, if somebody requests it, literally show you how many cigarette butts
Really?
they pick up. Yeah.
Who's keeping track of that? The
They
individual person?
Yeah, they have a system that's on their cell phones and how many times they get graffiti, how much graffiti they remove, how much dog or human waste they pick up, all different types of things, which is fantastic. And we're really excited about the safety side of that and the same reporting.
Well, I know we have several comments probably about the safety side. I'll just ask one more thing about trash. In the trash cans that are downtown, especially after a football game Saturday, those things are packed. Whose responsibility is it to empty those? City?
That is the city, yes. So the bins, the larger bins in the alleys and the trash cans around the district on the sidewalks, that is the city's responsibility. Block by Block does clean the top of them. So if they are overflowing, Block by Block will come pick up the stuff that's on the top of them, clean the top of it, but then it is the city that comes
How
in.
many comments do you get about overflow trash, like after a big MU event or something
Oh,
big?
oh, trash.
Yeah.
Trash is such a great conversation. Yeah, I mean, we get it all the time, but it hasn't compared to what it used to be, which is overflowing on the sidewalks, people walking through it. Compared to those days, it's much better, but yeah, it still needs we could have a trash pickup every single day. It'd be great.
So
That reminds me of one of my favorite niche issues downtown, if you will, is the alleyways with their dumpsters and, of course, the disposal of oil
Mm.
by businesses. I don't remember which alleyway it is. I feel like I always see complaints online from the business owners where they're talking about, who spilled this oil.
Yep. Yeah, okay, so, yeah, that's a fun, so the city took away the grease traps in the alleys probably 10-ish years ago. I don't remember where I was position-wise, but, they just kinda took it away and didn't there wasn't like, "Hey, here's alternatives for you to do."
Mhm.
So we knew that the business community, college students, they're just gonna dump it in the dumpsters, and that's going to flow into our alleys, get into our streams, so we created a grant for our businesses to install grease traps inside of their businesses so that it could be dumped and collected there instead of in the alleyways. But yeah, we still see stuff like that. And it's hard when you have 40 workers and they're all 21 just not paying attention to stuff or don't understand the consequences. So yeah, that's one of our bigger grants that we still have and still randomly utilized, but there's another great example of why we exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
how much do you think people need to know about the new ambassador program, the safety issue? Just a couple of questions that you might address, and then Nick, whatever you have to ask also on this. You've started us onto that trail, and you said there'll be a half dozen.
Mhm.
What do you think people need to know as far as when they start, what their hours are going to be, what days they're going to be down there, and what their responsibilities are? I feel like it's been pretty much discussed, and people should know this already, but I'm sure there's some people who either need a refresher course or it's new to them.
Absolutely, yes. I am very happy to talk about it. So this is the safety ambassadors through Block by Block. Again, Block by Block is in every downtown, not every downtown, but tons of downtowns. They're the ones that deal with Mardi Gras, so they know how to clean, they know how to
And
safety.
that's a company, correct?
Yes, yes, that is a company, a national company, for specifically downtowns. So, yeah, we'll have 6 security ambassadors. They will work through Thursday through Sunday mornings. So this is 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. They are extra eyes on the ground. They will not be armed. They will have cameras, like chest cameras, and they are there for, hey, there's a large group of people in this corner, getting louder and louder. Time to call somebody. You guys should probably get over here just to be aware. So they will they're keeping eyes out to see what problem areas are happening. They will be helping make sure that our food trucks and food stalls are permitted and in the right locations, making sure that our street lights are working so we don't have weird dark areas. There'll be one of the programs we want to put together is helping our bars and restaurants that have lines keep those lines in order so that they're not just chaos. And that's a great time for people to get mad at each other and start fights. So this is a very exciting program that we have been working towards for a long time. And to be able to partner with Mizzou and the city to get this going, it just I think really shows how much Columbia cares about this and how much we want to get this going. What else did you ask? I forgot.
No, that's good. I think that you've hit most of what I was wanting people to hear again. And when it starts, when is the first?
Yes. So they are in the hiring process and then they have a really extensive training. I think they said mid to end May is when you'll start seeing them on the.
So will they be introduced to the business? What do you have planned as far as like bar owners or others who own places that will be open during the time that they're going to be doing their rounds? How will there be a kind of a session to say, all right, here's what you can expect and here's how we want to work together and let us introduce you to the people you're going to start seeing?
Absolutely. So, yes, we love to do our CPD meet and greets. So, we hold those about twice a year for our businesses. We do one in the morning for retailers and one in the evening for our evening establishments. So we'll probably do something very similar to that, a meet and greet for everyone to come out and meet them. They can hear the complaints or the issues that the businesses see all the time, get some faces and some names type of thing so everybody knows each other and is comfortable when they walk into your establishment. But yes, these are, again, we want these people to see this as a career path. We want them to want this job and love what they're doing. So we want to keep our people as long as
They
possible.
may or may not be local hires.
Right. I think for the most part they'll be local. I could see maybe the team lead coming in from somewhere else. Typically block by block will fly out leaders from other communities to help set up.
And you mentioned that other communities have used this in the past. What have been the results? What are the track records? What do they show?
Fantastic. I haven't heard of any community starting this program and ending it. A lot of them start with campus. So they'll start on a campus hired through the university and then move out into the community as the city sees how successful it is. We went to Columbia, South Carolina with the chamber this last year, along with a lot of the city leaders, and they got to see them in action there. And I think that's where everyone was like, this is what we need in Columbia.
So again, will they be starting like at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon and ending Thursday at 3
No,
or
they'll be starting
Thursday at 5?
Thursday at 5, ending Friday at 3 a.m.
And going through the weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not starting at 5 on a Sunday afternoon, right?
No.
So that's
it'll just be
basically 4 days.
Yeah. 4 days, 10-hour shifts.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Hmm. I'm still confused by that because what was posted online in the preparation material of city council meeting ago showed starting on Wednesday at 5 till 3.
Maybe it is Wednesday, then yeah, that could
That would make sense for the 4.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah. That's
was-
what CPD also sees as
Mhm.
like those are the best shifts
Sure.
that people want. One of these ambassadors will be a full-time daytime ambassador that is specifically helping with outreach. We have had For a Change for about 9 years helping with our outreach, and they have been wonderful and fantastic. But this will be a 40-hour-a-week person on the ground every day, making connections with the homeless or those experiencing crisis and making sure they're getting what they need.
Part of the training also will be to how to mesh with the local police department.
Absolutely. Yes. The police department has been wildly helpful with this, and they will be their point of contact for the most part. So, this is a very fluid program. If CPD says, I think we actually need you 6 to 4 a.m. or things like that, we are very willing to listen to CPD and understand what their needs are, as well as block by block and the history that they have in other cities. So none of this is entirely locked in. We'll do it for 6 months, see if we need to change anything, switch it up type of thing.
Well, we can pivot away from downtown. I'm sure we'll come back to it.
Yeah,
Nickie,
no
but
worries.
that's why we brought you on. We appreciate you giving us all that context and for all the work you and your team do to make our downtown as wonderful as it is.
Thank you.
So last night was a light agenda, but council, as is their superpower, still spoke for 2 hours. and even if it was only about a couple subjects. And so I guess the first thing to touch on is, last night we had the swearing in of a new council member, Christina Hartman, Ward 5. She emerged victorious out of the April 7th election, ousting Ward 5, now former Ward 5 Councilman Don Waterman, who was seeking re-election. She was sworn in. This is her first council meeting. We both thank Don Waterman for his service to our city and wish Christina Hartman the absolute best in her pursuit of serving the city of Columbia. So with that, Councilwoman Hartman was quick to make her mark, I would say, kind of plant her flag on an issue, which was about leasing a city-owned property at 200 North Garth, which for those who might be unfamiliar, that is the northeast corner of Garth and Ash. And that is the former historic home, or I guess it's still historic, but it's the former home of Dr. Leroy McAllister, who was the one and only African-American dentist for that community from the 1930s to 1960s. And so very significant and a placement on the African-American Heritage Trail here in Columbia. That is a property that the city of Columbia came into possession of as, I believe, a donation from Compass Health, donated that to them. And the city took it for a variety of reasons, one of which, infrastructure-wise, that intersection is slated for at some point to be improved and therefore expanded, and some of the land on that corner property will probably be needed to do that. But in the meantime, what they came up with was this proposal, which would lease the property to Love Columbia, who would spend over $150,000 to renovate it and then have a 15-year lease so that they could use it as part of their homeowner readiness residential program, which is a transitional housing program that helps people go from being unhoused to housed. However, the contention last night, for those who may not have watched, was around the process of how this agreement came to be. So this came off of what would have been the consent
Hmm.
agenda at the request of Councilwoman Valerie Carroll of the First Ward. This property is in her ward. Again, a notable property. She requested it be off so they could discuss it and essentially discuss the process. And the main issue, again, being lack of public input in the process and public interest taken into account as to how the city should utilize the property, if it's going to be utilized for something other than, giving space to an infrastructure improvement. So that brought us here tonight. That was a long-winded introduction of the subject, but I just wanted to level set for everyone. It did end up passing in a 5-1 vote. Christina Hartman, that Ward 5 councilwoman who just got sworn in, she was the lone opposition vote on the grounds of a dissatisfaction with the public process that may or may not have gone into it. And so that's what happened. And I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts.
I think that it's a continued conversation of the city wanting to do something to help in their eyes, but forgetting the history that we have here and the community that is still very hurt by it and very affected by it, and the city's communication process. That was, and everyone that spoke last night was like, what Compass is doing is amazing. This is nothing against Compass. It's about
Love
uh,
Columbia.
Love
love
Columbia.
Columbia. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's about taking our history and not talking to us about it, type of thing. So that's my take on it.
Yes, I understand. I have a couple of thoughts on this. As I watched this, I thought it was a painful conversation to follow on the city council meeting. And I understand the anguish of the city council members as they tried to decide how to vote. If they had voted this down, what would have stood in the way of the city saying, this place is not safe, it's an eyesore, it's not being kept up, we'll tear it down. We'll demolish it. I think the city owning that property could have done that. I don't think they would have done that because the backlash about it being a historic property would have been way too much. So I don't think they were going to do that, but they could have done that.
Mm.
And for the city to have property and some organization, which I have a lot of respect for, to come and say, we have an idea of how we can make this usable. I think that is why the vote was 5 in favor of this, because they said this is a good plan. What the problem was, obviously, as you say, is the communication process. But as far as anything that could have prevented what happened last night, Love Columbia, I think, had a good plan. And they had the initiative to say, this property is here. They started a conversation, I would guess, with the city staff and said, we'd like to do something with it. And the city staff said, this seems like a good idea. Let's go with it. But then again, it seems amazing to me that we're at the point where we haven't learned by now that, especially in Columbia, you have to go through a long conversation about anything that the city is going to do with its property.
I think that that's really what it comes down to, right? Is I didn't really see anyone upset with the outcome that the city was shooting for in terms of this agreement with Love Columbia and what they're trying to do with the property. It's entirely about the process, right? It was that the city did not have a public input process, whether that was, collecting thoughts on Be Heard or soliciting expressions of interest, which is a formal process for the property, that it just kind of ran with like, hey, we have this property, we need to do something with it. And as Shane Creech, the public works director, did actually mention last night, one of the things they had considered was demolition
Yeah.
because it is so derelict. Because Love Columbia is a nonprofit, they're not putting $168,000 into it for fun, right? It's because it needs it so that it can be utilized.
Absolutely.
And as both of you mentioned, this is not a new pain point,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, this is continued. This is as long as the city's been in existence, it has continued to struggle on random items. And gotten, I think there's been continuous improvement on the process of public input and communication. But this is certainly an example of something that we've seen a couple times a year, right?
Absolutely.
Where something comes up where staff or council, in this case, seemingly staff, underestimated or overlooked the significance of something in terms of public input and ran with something, even if the outcome is satisfactory. It's unfortunate, but it was a solid reminder of, in this case, staff touched the hot stove.
Mm-hmm.
At least a couple of times last night, somebody mentioned Douglas Park and the process to decide on the renovation and the approval of Douglas Park facilities and use that as a comparison, which I thought was a pretty decent
Mhm.
comparison. My question also is, Did anybody have another idea of what to do with this property? Obviously, it wasn't opened up for people to have the chance to come up with an idea, but I just wonder what would have been ideas to do that would have been better than what Love Columbia has decided to do with this property.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point, right? Is we don't know because we, the city, didn't ask,
Mm,
right? There may have been a better idea. There may still be, uh, but there wasn't a solicitation for that interest. Even if the idea that was approved last night is a great one and one that seemingly everyone's happy to have move forward. I think it's more just about it's one of those things where almost like in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage or a partnership or some kind, it's like, well, you didn't ask.
So
yeah.
Right? It's as simple as that. It's like, "Oh, you didn't even ask. You know my answer, but maybe you should have asked."
that sounds like it. And so I guess what would be desired in the future would be for the city to say, we have X property.
Mhm.
We're not got any plans to do anything to it immediately, but we're willing to talk to those entities that would like to give us some suggestion of what they would do with this property and then go from there.
I think another point is it's not just a property. It's a historic Black-owned business that
Right.
has the African American Heritage Trail placard out there. Or, hey, we have people coming to us. They want to do this here. Give us your insight, community, making sure that you're hitting all of those different communications channels. And not everybody checks be heard. Or I half the time when I see those signs out in people's front yards that say public hearing, for what? Like I think it gives you the
It's
number or
generic.
something. Yes,
Right, it's
yes.
generic.
So I think it's just important to um, even keep the community informed before it comes to city council so that people aren't shocked about it.
So
Well, and last night, that was the kind of the final point on this subject was council directing staff to have them come back with a formal process for evaluating and soliciting public interest when it comes to city-owned property and potential projects on those.
Mm,
Because the city doesn't own a ton, certainly on the residential side, does not own a lot of residential property, but it does own some. And whether it's residential or commercial, like the McKinney building,
mhm.
coming up downtown, it is something that people care about it. And as David alluded to earlier, in this city especially, there's always somebody who cares very strongly. It doesn't matter what the subject is. You can make it up. Someone's going to care very strongly about it. That is just the nature of our community, for better and for worse.
well, all I would say, I guess, was a learning moment last night. It was a learning moment
Yeah.
for, again, the city council, which I think some of the members expressed being blindsided by this.
Mm,
And I think then it's going to be a lesson for the staff, who, again, I feel like the staff was following what the procedures were and said, this is an idea that is worth developing. That's why we're going to bring it to the city council. So I don't think it was anybody's intention was wrong. I just think it was one of those where, again, what we've just kind of reiterated is that let's talk about this ahead of time. Let's communicate what plans are out there. And what they could have done in this point would have said, probably in some sort of a public setting, hey, we have a proposal from an organization that is nonprofit, what to do with this property. Are there other proposals? Or what is your reaction to this?
mhm.
And do it before you spring it on a consent agenda item at a city council meeting.
Absolutely. Can I shameless plug right real quick?
Of course.
I am wearing my Shops at Sharpened shirt. So, Sharpened is our historic Black owned business district downtown. The Sharpened currently are ARPA funds run out in September. So we are doing extensive, we've hired people to help us understand what our next steps could be. But even during this, specifically coming from DeCarlin, we will be doing several public input meetings as we look forwards to the next steps of the Sharpened. So keep up with that at discoverthedistrict.com.
DeCarlin Seawood being the city manager.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Very good. So moving on to the next subject, which was really the only other thing discussed last night, even though it was only on introduction and first read, we have coming up, and this was previously discussed and alluded to, we knew this was coming. The city council is finally going to be taking up the uh, bill, essentially, to put on the ballot in August of this coming August 2026, August 4th election, a proposal to increase the sales tax by 1% and have that 1% sales tax dedicated to public safety. That measure would generate approximately $38 million annually and would fund fire station rehab, new fire stations as well, upwards of 50 additional police officers, more firefighters, and pension obligations that the city needs to meet for
Mm.
both existing and retired public safety staff with here. Again, this was on intro and first read last night, which means city council did not have a public hearing or have really much of a public discussion on it. That will occur at the May 4th meeting, where there will be an opportunity for public comment, and council will have to vote on it for it to end up on the ballot in time.
Would that include a new police station also?
I believe that's part of the goal, is a new, if not at the minimum, renovated police
Renovated,
station.
yeah.
I think ideal world, that building would get renovated regardless, and then the police would either stay there or go somewhere else in town,
Mhm, mhm.
because it is a less than optimal setup for anyone regardless, but especially for the police department. So this is certainly a subject that's going to be occupying people's minds between now and August. As we were just discussing with Nickie, public safety, obviously a major concern, always has been, always will be, for the downtown district. The block by block safety ambassador program is coming up, will be being deployed over the summer. I'm curious from your perspective, really representing that heart of that concern, right? Is people, if you look back, especially over the last year, where we've had kind of flare-ups of violence or and at worst loss of life,
Mhm.
that occurring downtown especially gets a lot of attention. This has to be top of your mind. I'm sure it's top of your board of directors' minds. I'm not asking, if like what's the official position, is the district supporting this or opposing this, for example, but just more generally speaking at this time.
Yeah. So, yes, I mean, I think it's incredibly important to make sure we have that the funds for the different retirement things that we have already promised. But we need a stronger police force. We're still not up to full capacity. This has been going on since at least 2015, when kind of all the, I'm not going to say brat castles, came up in the downtown area. We've never really had that increase in the policing that we've needed downtown. We are still missing our on-ground district unit. Everybody knew their name. Businesses loved it. We still don't have that back. I think it is something that needs to happen. I originally thought 1% was a lot. I thought that was going to be too much. But then I did sit through a budgeting meeting where they talked about other cities compared to us, similar sized cities compared to what we have. And it's very on track. And I still think keeps us below what is tax wise, what is normal in other cities. So that made me feel a lot better. But we we need to do this. We are growing so quickly. This is something that is only going to help our police department again find those individuals that should be officers, that want to be officers, that are dedicated to serving our community. Block by block, and our safety ambassadors are wonderful, but they're not the police. They're not going to be putting people in handcuffs or putting them in jail. Not saying everyone should be put in handcuffs and put in jail, but it's time for us to catch up. And I think we need to. I think
What's
we
going
need
to
to
be
do it.
interesting is I think a lot of people who are shoppers and consumers, they see the sales tax, period. They don't know how it's broken down into segments. And so what's going to happen is if the state votes against an income tax, sales taxes are going to go up statewide from the state's side. So I think people lump everything together. A year or two from now, or three, I'd like to know what the sales tax is going to be, period, in any purchases that we make in the state of Missouri.
That presents a very interesting dynamic, not just for the city of Columbia, the whole state, but because the city of Columbia really started down this process 2 or 3 years ago, discussing and exploring this. And as the city does, it takes a long time, talks to a lot of people, such as the district and others. They're just now at the point where they've agreed on the terms of what it should look like. They're going to put it on the ballot, assuming it passes in that May 4th meeting. They did not predict. They could not have
Mm.
predicted that the state legislature with the new governor was going to say, hey, let's abolish income tax and instead offset it, among other ways, with an increased sales tax. That is unfortunate timing.
Mm.
Mhm.
It certainly impacts this. I can't imagine it any other way but negatively. I really look forward to seeing, how is the city going to message this? How are they going to campaign? Because, and I say the city will have to set up a separate independent entity to campaign. The city of Columbia as an entity cannot do it. City staff can't do it. But as is always the case, there will be a separate entity where they recruit, the mayor and council, whoever recruits stakeholders to be the speakers and to be the campaigners for this proposition, essentially to increase it. I look forward to seeing how they address that, because that's, to David's point, right? At the end of the day, people are looking at their cost of living. Is it going to cost me more? Is it going to cost me more on top of what the state is presumably going to be passing sometime within the next month?
Mm.
Right. And that's going to be top of mind, especially in an era where everybody's talking about cost of living in general. I'm fascinated already. I'm going to be watching this over the next 3 months again, assuming it passes at the May 4th meeting, with a bucket of popcorn, because it's going to be a fascinating thing to watch. And I can't tell you, I talked to some folks last night at council, and I think assuming it makes it on the ballot, whether it passes or fails, I think it's going to be a close vote. And I think it's going to be contentious the entire way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's so that's, when I said the 1% is high, we have downtown, and then I believe at the mall and maybe a couple other shopping locations, we're funded by a half-cent sales tax.
Hmm.
So downtown, our taxes are already higher. Our sales tax are already higher than other places in the city. So that's for the businesses, the business community, that's a hard pill to swallow for their customers who have been shopping with them for years and already seeing prices creep up, and then to have this added on top of it. So yeah, there's going to need to be a lot of buy-in.
There's probably a way that somebody is going to answer the question I'm about ready to ask that I'm not aware of right now. But if I'm pro safety and if I'm pro police and if I am pro knowing that we want to have a safer downtown slash whole community, how can I vote against this?
Money.
True.
Right? I think pocketbook rules a lot of folks' emotions more than anything else. There will be people, if we were to dumb it down and just in terms of like the political spectrum, let's say, right? You have people far left, far right, and everyone in between. If you go far enough left, far enough right, there's going to be people on both ends of it in our community who, for different but similar reasons, are going to be very opposed to this.
Yes, and I think some people, there will be an element who will be opposed to this just because of those who are in position to propose this. In other words, if someone else was sitting in a certain chair, I think they would be fully on
Mm,
board with this.
mm,
But I think it'll be I don't like you, so I'm not going to support you in this, what I would have. And, people are fickle enough that they will do that.
mhm.
I don't know if it's enough to sway the results of this vote, but you know what I'm talking.
Well, and as a small business owner, you want safety in your downtown, but you also want your customers, and raising prices that's a balance right there.
Well, those who are going to oppose this are going to have to come up with a plan themselves to say, we could pay for better safety and more police officers and better fire stations and better pension coverage if we eliminate X.
Mm,
The money's there. We just don't believe that it's being done right. Maybe they want to eliminate something else, but they're going to have to organize to show us how would you fund the safety edge of this and what will you defund in order to reach it if you vote no on this tax.
As someone who's run for office, I'll be the political person here for a moment and share this observation slash commentary, which is I think back to last year in the mayor's race. We had Barbara Ruffalo up for re-election. We had Blair Murph, as the opponent trying to oust the mayor. The main subject being public safety, right? Period. That was the whole campaign, was public safety. In this case, in that case, on Blair Murphy's side, right, he in this campaign raised and spent $250,000 on the basis of public safety as an issue in Columbia needs to be addressed. Got a notable amount of votes, right? So people care about that, both from a monetary perspective, we're willing to invest in that, and he got votes, right? I'm curious to see, will that coalition, who did not, kind of to David's point earlier,
That is my
did not
point.
support Barbara Buffalo in her reelection, who is now going to be one of the many faces of this push, are they going to show up monetarily and at the polls to make public safety happen?
And
That
that's
is a
my
huge
point.
question. Yeah.
Some won't. Some won't ever support anything that is going to be proposed by certain people
mm.
in certain chairs right
Right.
now of city government.
Someone they don't like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's human nature. I get it. I get it.
Well, I'd be curious again. I'll be the political person here. I'm not trying to call anyone out. I'm just saying from a political angle, I'd be curious to see, is Blair Murphy, who was the candidate, very passionate on the subject. I know he's very involved with the first responder support nonprofit, does amazing work there. Clearly a gentleman who cares greatly about our community. Is someone like him going to come out in support of this? I'd be curious to see that. I mean, we'll find out, but I think someone like him coming out in support of it, or Randy Minshew, who ran for mayor before him, people who care greatly about public safety, who have been the face of the cause, folks who people are familiar with by name, right? That's who I think people are going to be looking to see, well, does Blair Murphy or Randy Minshew or pick your person come out and say, hey, you may not like the current mayor. You may not be happy with the political preferences of your city council right now, but this is important and we should do X, Y, or Z. Right? Is that going to happen? I have no idea. That's certainly going to be one of the barometers that we got to watch to see if that happens or not.
Absolutely.
And if they don't support the tax, but support public safety, goes back to something else I said. What's your plan?
Mm-hmm.
What's your plan
Absolutely.
to improve public safety without passing this tax? And there may be a plan.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something else before I know we're short on time. Anything else specifically from the city council meeting? Because I've got something for the executive director, Nickie Davis here.
Oh, we can pivot.
All right. This is separate. I want to emphasize this. I'll raise my voice. This is separate, in my opinion, from public safety, but I understand other people relate it. How do you suggest citizens who come downtown deal with the homeless situation? I mean, I regularly
Like
am
the general
asked for
public?
money
Mm-hmm.
and am regularly I don't ever feel threatened. I've
Yep.
never felt threatened by a homeless person.
Yep.
I've just had contact with them and I try to say good morning. I try to say, no, I can't help you, or yes, I can help you. But what do you say?
I'm very much on that line. It doesn't hurt to make eye contact with somebody and say good morning. And I do not give them money. I think that's just kind of a cycle that's not going to help. But we have, for a change, John Trapp, who we have business cards for him that can be handed. We give it to all of our businesses. Anybody who wants them, you can say, hey, are you hungry? John Trapp can help you. They almost all know him and usually are like, either will absolutely say yes, or some will say, no, I don't need John. But it's being civil, These people are experiencing something. We have no idea what they're going through, but it does not hurt to say, how's your day going? Thank you so much. No, I can't help you. Have a good one. That type of thing.
So my question is, with the Opportunity Campus, which will soon be up and running at full strength, we hope this summer at least, are we just inevitably going to have some people on the streets or on the sidewalks, which we do not necessarily know they're without shelter or without a home, but that's just an inevitable part of any community. Is that true statement or not?
I would say yes. This is a problem internationally. This is not just downtown Columbia. This is not just St. Louis. This is every downtown has this situation. Some people are not comfortable indoors. So as much as this Opportunity Campus is bringing to Columbia, and they have thought of everything. If you've not taken a tour, go take a tour. They're very open to that. They have thought of everything, but there are several individuals that we have downtown that are not comfortable indoors, period, because of whatever life circumstances have happened. So unfortunately, while hopefully they can get other resources, staying in a shelter is not one of them. So yes, I think that we will continue to, as we have for years before, see individuals out on the sidewalks. But hopefully with the Opportunity Campus opening and the programs that they will have in there, we will see less of it, more people getting help or getting housing. But this isn't a cure-all, unfortunately.
I think we probably expended our time,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious before you wrap up, when you get to this, you have always asked for questions and always asked for reactions.
Well,
So
I actually had one more
listen,
thing before we got
okay.
to questions. So one other thing that was it wasn't on the agenda last night, but it happened at the end. Shane Creech, Public Works Director, he spoke at the very end in the staff comments, just kind of provided some context and color for folks on the I-70 construction and the US 63 construction that's happening and obviously impacting the city of Columbia because it crisscrosses our city. Essentially, what he had to do was make sure everyone understood that one, well, a variety of things. This is in no particular order. I'm just going off my notes. Pretty much acknowledged, hey, this is painful. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And that when it comes to the pain points of intersections getting backed up because overpasses are disappearing or exit ramps no longer exist, a lot of those intersections are MoDOT controlled and not city controlled.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the city, as one would assume they would, and they are working heavily and frequently with MoDOT to try to get those, the timing of the lights adjusted to try not to get things so backed up because of all this construction. At the same time, he also noted, more diplomatically than I will, what is that we have to understand, we don't have a choice but to understand MoDOT's priorities. Right. MoDOT's priorities are to ensure to the greatest extent possible that I-70 and US 63 do not get backed up. If that means backing up the streets around those highways and intersections, that is something that MoDOT is more okay with than the city is, because the MoDOT wants the flow of traffic on the highways at 63 or 70 flowing. So if you're on Clark or you're on
Well,
Keene Street or Broadway or Grindstone and those start getting backed up, that is a necessary function of how MoDOT is setting things up.
Well, he gave the example, Keene and St. Charles, city-owned traffic light there. So they can adjust that timing of Keene and St. Charles, go just a little bit further to the south, and you've got Keene and Broadway or WW, which is a state highway department controlled light. So the city can do whatever it wants at Keene and St. Charles unless it impacts what's happening at Broadway and Keene Street. And I thought he was told the trouble of how that is, because what you're saying, Nick, is that if you're not careful at Keene and Broadway, you got traffic backed up on 63, which is a no-no. So
Well,
it's just going to be, it is going to be a painful treatment, and the diagnosis is not good. Hopefully you'll be healed in 3 or 4 years.
yes, it is a necessary evil. And as I myself have been sharing with folks, including last night, part of this we all have to keep in mind. It's not just that MoDOT is widening I-70. It's that MoDOT is doing 20 to 30 years worth of overdue maintenance and improvements that they never had the money to do.
Yep.
Right? They're not dropping out, they're not destroying these bridges and rebuilding entire interchanges for fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's because if they don't do this, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way to put it nicer. then it's going to hurt worse. It is short-term pain, relatively speaking, for long-term gain. Don't get me wrong. As somebody who lives on the northeast side of Columbia, the fact that the St. Charles Bridge is gone, there's and there's more coming. Right? They're dropping Providence Road Bridge once school is out, and I assume in May or June, depending on weather and timing. But that's coming. And then in the fall, they're dropping the stadium interchange. So folks, grit your teeth, buy some ibuprofen.
Stay home.
Headaches.
Get an audiobook.
Stay home, ride your bike, walk to work.
There you go.
If you can, the MKT trail's generous. We're just going to have to suffer through it. And I would encourage everyone, have patience. Everyone's backed up. Everyone's late to work. Everyone's late to picking up their kids. The city's going to do what it can, but no matter how much they adjust the timing of stoplights, it's not going to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Those lights have to turn red at some point to let other people go. And they cannot adjust for the tens of thousands, literally, this is not exaggeration, tens of thousands of vehicles that go down I-70 and 63 every single day. Some of those, a not insignificant percentage of those, are going to be diverted onto roads that are not ideal for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all going to suffer as a consequence for the next year while Columbia gets its long overdue health and safety improvement on our roads. But folks, just keep thinking in the car, as I do, it's going to be so nice when it's done.
It won't. It'll be congested. Ian Thomas, former city council member, when they were talking about Nifong, which is now Grindstone, he said, oh yeah, you can build that. But when you build something like that, more traffic comes. So you're still going to have some of the same problems.
Mm.
Well,
You're never going to solve the problems.
Pedestrian access will be.
Maybe. I'm sorry to be negative on this, but you can build.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying
3 lanes on I-70 across the state. Sometimes it's unnecessary, and then it's not going to make people any happier once they get out there and the traffic increases.
Well, and I'm fully aware that more lanes does not decrease traffic. That's a proven fact. But anyways, it'll still be nicer to not have to get off at the 6370 interchange.
That's true.
When to change highways.
Yeah, when the interchanges are back. I mean, when the overpasses are back. Yeah. People say.
Anyways, I just wanted to touch on that because I know it's a subject on everybody's mind, especially those of us who have to use 70 and 63 to get around town quite a bit, like I do. It is something that you have to account for and is impacting your everyday life. So with that, we will switch to something less dissatisfactory. And folks, we always want your questions. We want your comments. Go to ComoVanguard.com, click on the little box that says submit a question to the show. Doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment. It can be, tell us about your day. Tell us what you think about I-70 and 63. I'm sure we can get some
Oh,
comments going
yeah.
there. We did get a couple comments since our last show. One comment, one question. Okay, so for the comment we had from someone named Brian Mink out of Ward 4, their comment was that they thought it would be great for us to have Christina Hartman on the show, obviously new councilwoman for Ward
Mhm.
5. Our response is absolutely. We're going to have her on. We're working our way through council. Everyone will be on eventually. I was talking to, for example, Councilwoman Vera Elwood and separately Valerie Carroll last night, and we are coordinating that. Kind of our goal for folks who might be curious about how we organize and who we bring on, because we do these in conjunction with regular city council meetings, means that we are only doing a max of 24 episodes a year. That's not a lot.
Yeah.
Council does not even meet that often in regular session, right? They cancel around holidays. So we're probably not actually talking about 24 episodes. Because of that, we have to be careful or mindful rather about who we can bring on and when, because we want to make sure that it's timely, such as having Nickie Davis on. We're talking about public safety and things downtown. And of course, making sure that we give time across the board to our elected officials and working through city council. If you have suggestions or you think, hey, make sure this person's on your list, again, go on comovanguard.com, click that submit a question or comment button. Let us know who you think would be a great guest. But to Bry's point here, yes, we'll have Councilwoman Christina Hartman on, assuming she's willing, and we look forward to that.
Let her breathe for a second.
Yeah, let her
She's
breathe.
got a lot going on.
I didn't think it'd be a good idea to bring her on after her very first meeting. We'll give her a month or so before giving her on. And then the question we got from a gentleman named Tyler, this was regarding the previous council meeting where they were discussing data centers. He submitted just kind of context for, the city was discussing the definition of data centers. And at that time, they were considering, well, can we put a moratorium on permitting these and building these, and whether or not they had to do that separately. So what they ended up doing, council, they defined data centers. They did not at that moment put a moratorium in place, which was something they discussed as a possibility. And there was also confusion as to, well, can we do a moratorium right now that evening because it hadn't been discussed ahead of time, or do we need to wait and do it, in a different process? So with that context, listeners, the question was from Tyler, also Ward 4, what would be the pros and cons of council more directly legislating and proposing their own amendments mid-process? Has this been attempted before? Do you believe staff would allow this to happen? Anyone want to take a go at that first?
I'll say, that makes me very nervous when you're thinking of something off the top of your head, when people are heightened, passionate, and you make a change right then and there. I see lots of issues with that. Somebody brought this to me for my board. I would strongly encourage them taking even just a week and let's re-meet or discuss it again. We used to do quite a bit of that. Let's just do this right now. And we saw a lot of faults in that and made some wrong decisions, I think. So I think it's important. Bring it up then. That's great, but not make a full decision right at that moment, in my personal opinion.
I think his point may be they had the power to do that if they wanted to do that. I would say probably yes, they do have that power. But like Nickie said, is that the wisest thing to exercise that power at that point in time? And that would be at that point in time within that context for them to decide.
I'll kind of address these in reverse order. Do you believe staff would allow this to happen? I don't think it's a question of whether or not staff would allow it to happen. If council has the power to do something, staff will and should express to council, as they routinely do, these are the powers you have right now to do X, Y, or Z, right? If you want to make X happen, this would be the process for that. If you want Y, this is how to do it. That is how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. Has this been attempted before? Certainly. There's certainly been amendments on the fly. That happens all the time, especially around like budget time. And I would say certainly on less complicated matters than the data center question. And then, what would be the pros and cons? I agree with Nickie and David here that, the pros are, well, speed and efficiency, perhaps, in terms of, oh, let's act on this right now and not wait. But the con is you increase risk of making a perhaps poorly informed decision or acting emotionally, or as last night, one of the subjects was lacking public input, right? If you're going to make an amendment on something that is important to people, but they didn't know that was going to happen and they're not there to comment on it, where's the public input?
I completely
Right.
agree.
And so there are pros and cons, certainly. I think in this instance, generally, I would recommend and I would prefer erring on the side of, well, let's table that to the next meeting And for anyone who's like, oh, well, the council, that's 2 weeks or that's a month, I always say this: council can meet as frequently as it wishes.
Mhm.
They have a set routine. They're not restricted by that, other than by how they choose to be restricted by
Mhm.
that.
I'm starting to see why city council meetings go so long, and this is almost going as long as a city council meeting.
Well, maybe that's me being a former council member. I can't help myself.
I'm afraid you've got the disease.
I should, yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I can't help myself. But that was our questions. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Bri, for submitting questions and comments. This has been the Como Vanguard podcast. You can find everything, the show, the written publication, links to submit questions and comments, comovanguard.com. I also wanted to take this moment to give an extra special shout out to our in-person host, our producer, everything like that, our DJ, Jay Sparks with Marker Squeak Consulting. Jay Sparks has been a phenomenal friend of the show, supporter,
Host.
host. And for folks who may or may not be aware, when we first went to start this podcast, we had a separate space set up and the rug got pulled out from under us, and Jay was able to accommodate us. He has continued to accommodate us. We are, what, 8 episodes in now, give or take. We're very grateful. And so if you see him and you like listening to the show, thank him for having hosted us these past almost 5-6 months now, because we would have been in a real pickle otherwise. But with
Thanks,
that,
Jay.
yeah, thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Nickie Davis.
Thank you,
Nikki
Jay. Thank
Davis.
you, guys.
And this has been the Como Vanguard Show. We'll see you guys next time.